Rabbi Richman, could you explain to me what the vision of the Temple Institute was at its founding? When was that, and what were your hopes?
The Temple Institute was founded actually back in 1987, and its goal was really quite unique, but at the same time I think quite firmly rooted in our basic understanding of what Torah life is all about. The Temple Institute was founded to do as much as possible to be active, to be osek in the positive commandment of V'asu leMikdash v'shachanti b'tocham. You shall make for me a sanctuary, Hashem says, and I will dwell amongst them. And this, of course, is from the book of Exodus. And that's the commandment to build the temple. And the idea here really is that the commandment to build the Holy Temple is a commandment that applies in every generation. The Rambam tells us in Hilchot Beit HaBechira, Mitzvat Aseh lasot bayit l'Hashem, muchan lihiyot bo makrivim korbanot. It's a positive commandment to make the house for Hashem, ready to offer the offerings there. And our goal really is to do as much as possible within the confines of the human condition, the reality of our time, and within the confines, of course, of halakha, to be involved in the commandment of building the temple, not to be the generation that doesn't see the building of the temple because they didn't try, to prepare as much as can be done now for the time of the renewal of the divine service, since this is basically the major mandate of every prophet of Israel. It tells us that the temple is going to be rebuilt. It's going to usher in a time unlike any other in human history, unparalleled, when all humanity will be united and raised to a new level of consciousness, a true recognition of the one true God. And our goal really is to build the Holy Temple. That's been the goal of every subsequent generation of the Jewish people since the temple's destruction. In fact, when people ask, when was the movement to rebuild the temple born, I always say about 2,000 years ago. In fact, if you look at the history of the Jewish people and you read Chazal and you read our sources, you understand that so much of the legislation that was passed by our great wise men at the time of the destruction was designed to make sure that the Jewish people not only never forget that they are fish without water, without the Holy Temple, not only never forget that once upon a time there was a Holy Temple, but to design that the Jewish people should be rallied around that as a rallying point, and to see to it that we are always totally obsessed with the fact that life as it is now without the Holy Temple is not at all what we were designed for, and it cannot go on. This is not normal for the Jewish people to be without the Holy Temple. And everything has become muted. Everything has become distilled, and it's all very pale. It's like the color has been taken out of the picture. Everything is just black and white, because it is exactly what the last Mishnah in Tractate Sota tells us. The difference between life now and when the temple stood. The fruit doesn't have any taste anymore, and one day means that it doesn't have any nutritional value. Everything is just totally muted without the Holy Temple, because we were created to live on a level of revelation and of understanding our close relationship with Hashem. Look, we're sitting in the Sukkah now, and Sukkot is a time of prophecy. It's the time of our true joy. The Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the festival of the water libation, the festival, the Simcha, the joy of the place of drawing. The Jerusalem Talmud tells us that it's called drawing not only because the water was drawn for pouring on the altar, but because the spirit of prophecy, Ruach HaKodesh, was drawn down on all the people, because it can only exist through joy. And everybody who came to the Holy Temple during Sukkot for the Simchat Beit HaShoeva was mitnabeh. They all were overcome with the spirit of prophecy. That's life. That's living. Not this, this dull, dreary, tired, depressing world that we live in now. We were created to live with Hashem in our midst. Mishnah in Pirkei Avot tells us that during the time that the temple stood, there were 10 miracles going on all the time. What does that mean? And they're enumerated there. The smoke from the altar always rose in a straight line. There were no flies, all sorts of things. What Chazal are telling us is that every single person, no matter who they were, no matter what level they were on, they didn't have to be a spiritual giant. When you came to the Holy Temple, you said, wow, there really is a God in the world. Because it was like the arena for the unfolding saga, the direct relationship of man and God. And there's something very wrong with us now because we don't feel that. You know, every year in the 3 weeks in the summertime we have the Bein HaMitzarim, and it's politically correct then for Jewish people to be talking a lot about the temple, and we mourn the Mahadrin. You know, everybody loves to mourn because it's much easier to mourn than it is to do something about the situation. But the truth is, the mitzvah is not to remember the Churban. The mitzvah is to remember the temple. And if something doesn't happen, a paradigm shift of our consciousness and our behavior, what guarantee do you have that next year you won't be sitting on the floor again saying keynotes the same way? Nothing is ever going to change. Everyone is waiting for Hashem himself to come and tap us on the shoulder and say, Kinderlach, let's make peace now. I love you. Here's the temple. Here it is. Bugle calls, the temple rolling down. That's not going to happen. Nothing will happen unless the Jewish people rises up like a lion, like Bilam saw that we would, and realizes enough is enough. And we're not talking here about a confrontation with the geopolitical reality. We're talking about at least the will, the desire within the Jewish people to realize we have to do everything within our power to see to it that the temple becomes a reality.